Sitting in the stall of my middle school's second floor bathroom, I looked down at the big red stain in the middle of my underwear. I had already been gone from class for 5 minutes, but I could not go back to class now with blood soaking through my pants. Of course, there were no pads or tampons in sight. So, out of desperation, I wadded up some toilet paper, stuffed it in my underwear, and hoped that it wouldn't fall out from my shorts the next time that I stood up. My face was red with embarrassment. I was scared, I was humiliated, and I was distracted. I can promise you that participating in class for the rest of the day was the last thing on my mind. Now, I'd like to take a quick poll here and see how many of you have had a similar experience. Quite a few. So this is the reality for millions of people who menstruate. Periods are often irregular, and we don't always have a tampon with us when we need it. A national study found that 86% of women have started their period unexpectedly in public, and 79% of women have had to improvise some alternate method of absorbing their blood flow when they lacked the supplies they needed. That sucks. But before I continue, I would like to give a little bit of a background, because not everybody here knows what a period is, and not everybody here may know what a tampon is used for. So, a period is when the lining of a person's uterus sheds and is passed through the vagina. When a person is on their period, they need products like menstrual products, we call them menstrual products, to absorb that blood flow. A period can last for days or weeks and may occur predictably or unpredictably, depending on the individual. I happen to fall into the lovely unpredictable category, which might be why I was in the earlier situation in the first place. So as I said earlier, during a period, a person will require a menstrual products, which is usually a pad, which is placed in their underwear. It's got these little wings on the side, and you stick around your underwear, and it's a whole thing. Or a tampon inserted in the vagina to absorb the uterine lining, the blood, and the fluids that are being passed. A period cannot be held in the same way as when you need to hold it before you go to the bathroom, but rather, fluid flows spontaneously throughout the day and night. For this reason, once a person gets their period, they need a pad or a tampon immediately, or else they will be stranded and forced to either improvise or bleed through their clothes. And I will mention here that not all people who menstruate are women, because many transgender men and gender nonconforming people also have periods. For this reason, you might notice that I alternate between using gender-neutral terms like menstruating person and more gendered terms like girl, woman, or female. Because while this is largely an issue of sexism and gender-based discrimination, it's important to note that not all people affected by this issue are women. The bottom line is people who menstruate need tampons like all of us need toilet paper. And yet while bathrooms provide paper towels and soap and toilet paper, there are rarely, if ever, tampons provided in bathrooms. If you're lucky enough to have a bathroom with a tampon dispenser, it's probably coin-operated, like a gumball machine, and it's almost certainly empty. But unlike gumballs, tampons are not little luxuries, they are everyday necessities. And it does get worse. It's not just that periods are a humiliating inconvenience. Many people who menstruate actually can't afford to buy these products themselves. This is a phenomenon called period poverty. For homeless women, this can mean using rags, socks, or clothing to absorb their menstrual flow. For low-income women, this can mean regularly choosing between buying food and buying tampons. For female students, this can mean staying home from school when you're on your period, because if you can't afford the products, you'll have to bleed through your clothes during class. And it's less rare than you may think. 1 out of every 5 female students has been absent from school because they can't access the menstrual products that they need. This is a stain on our education systems, pun intended. Non-menstruating students never have to worry about this while focusing on their education. So, what led me to being up here and talking to you all about periods? I know it's not the most traditional topic, but it all started in high school when my teacher asked us to write a paper arguing for something that we were passionate about. I honestly had no idea what I was going to write about. You know that panicked feeling you get when the deadline is just inching closer and you're coming up empty? Yeah, that was absolutely my situation. But that all changed when I stumbled across a YouTube video about homeless women who cannot afford menstrual products. I dug deeper and I learned that female students also suffer from period poverty. The more I learned, the more outraged I became. I ended up writing my paper arguing that menstrual products must be provided in bathrooms at no cost to students. Not to brag, but I did get an A on that paper, and and my teacher, Mr. Collins, approached me after class to say that I should take this fight beyond the classroom. And that is exactly what I did. State Representative Jeffrey Roy was a guest speaker at my high school for our annual Civics Day. After his speech, I went up to him and just said, I have this idea, can I send you a letter? So I did, and sure enough, a few weeks later, he invited me to his office. I felt pretty cool sitting across from the state representative at his big wooden desk, and I told him all about periods and tampons and how frustrating it is that the tampon dispensers at my school are coin-operated. And it actually seemed really obvious to him that tampons would already be in bathrooms just like toilet paper. He said, you know, I bet the women's bathrooms in my office already have them. So, like the practical guy that he is, he asked if I could go check. So I did, and to his surprise, I found exactly what I expected, a dispenser requesting 25 cents. And it wasn't some old metal dispenser that could have been there since the 1950s. It was brand new, plastic, blue, almost pretty. And it just struck me that we are so stuck in our old ways that we are building brand new bathrooms with age-old habits, just in new packaging. So I reported back, and that's when Representative Roy invited me to write down exactly what I believed would solve the problem. I wrote that the products had to be in bathrooms, and they had to be free for students. But why was I being so specific? So in terms of why they have to be in bathrooms, some schools already do provide menstrual products. But when they do, they are typically in nurses' offices, and they're typically for emergencies only. The problem is that girls get their periods every month. And it's not some freak event, it's a normal part of life. Having to go to the nurse's office every single time you need a tampon wastes valuable class time, and it reinforces this notion that your period is an illness rather than a normal bodily function. And the products have to be at no cost because, as we kind of mentioned earlier, it's a financial barrier to education. It's also just common sense. You don't pay 25 cents every time you wipe your butt, and you definitely shouldn't be paying 25 cents every time you use a tampon. And I'd also like to throw in here that many schools already provide condoms for free and tampons for a cost. While it's important that we're providing condoms for obvious reasons, it always struck me that you can choose to have sex, but you can't choose to have a period. And I can promise you that one of those is a lot more fun. But anyway, the bill was filed and the hearing would be in a few months. And this is the name of my bill, the Menstrual Product Access in State Schools Act. And this is what a bill looks like. I testified for my bill the day after I graduated high school. I wish I could say that I was well prepared and confident, but that would not exactly be the truth. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I got to the State House and suddenly found myself in a hot, cramped room full of staffers, legislators, reporters, and lots of cameras. I noticed that the advocates testifying ahead of me for their own bills had some sheets of paper with notes of what they were going to say. Interesting. I didn't have that. But my name was called. I got up and I spoke from the heart. I talked about pads and periods and vaginas and described how humiliating it is to be stranded in a bathroom stall without a tampon. And I made my case that tampons are just as essential as toilet paper. It was terrifying and liberating to talk openly about all the things that I was trained to whisper. After that experience, I decided that periods are a normal part of life for half the population, and I was done being quiet about it. A few weeks later, the Education Committee voted in our favor. 3 years of advocacy later, and our bill is in a third reading in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. And we will soon be merging with a similar bill on the Senate side that will also ensure access to products in prisons and homeless shelters. We hope to have our bill on the governor's desk by the end of this legislative session. Seeing the governor's signature on my bill is going to feel like lightning. But I share all this for a few reasons. It's not just that I love talking about tampons, because I do, and I do a lot, but I also want to demystify the whole legislative process. I began this process with no experience, and I can say confidently that you do not need to be an expert to be an advocate. What you need is to be passionate about an injustice, persistent in fixing it, and eager to learn how. It's important to me that more people become involved in the legislative process because it's a huge way that problems are made and problems are solved. When ordinary people, like you and me, look the other way, legislation tends to favor the wealthiest, the loudest, and the most privileged, and problems become systemized. When ordinary people get involved, we can use the exact same tool to dismantle injustices and solve problems. Second of all, I just love talking about public health, and I will figure out any way to bring it up in conversation. We often equate public health with infectious diseases like COVID-19, Ebola, HIV. You get the idea, but that's just one piece of the whole pie. Public health is a holistic discipline that is concerned with the conditions in which we live, work, age, worship, learn, and play, and how happy and healthy we all are. Public health is in every single one of your daily lives. It's in the air you breathe, the food you eat, the bus you take, the job you work, the relationships you cherish. And it's for that reason that I say that teachers and construction workers and financial managers are all public health workers, because they all affect our quality of life. I also like to say that public health is in our sidewalks and in our friendships, and also in our tampons. It's also in our education. High school graduates have better health and lower medical costs than high school dropouts. And poor students are at greater risk of dropping out. Being absent regularly is a contributing factor to dropping out. Now, compare that to 1 out of 5 female students being absent because they cannot afford menstrual products. If you follow that line of thought, tampons keep girls in schools, keeping girls in schools promotes graduation, and graduation is associated with better long-term health. And this is not me saying that tampons are the cure-all for health and education attainment, but with one relatively simple and relatively inexpensive solution, we can put menstrual products in bathrooms where and when students need them. We can promote student success, and we can ensure that getting a period in the middle of class is solved by a 3-minute trip to the bathroom, rather than becoming a moment of fear and shame that is remembered years later and shared on a TEDx stage. So to wrap all this up, women should not be conditioned to be ashamed of their bodies. Menstrual products shouldn't be taboo. Girls should not miss school because they don't have access to the products that they need. And no one should be stranded in a bathroom stall with blood soaking through their pants. And I know that the legislative process can seem confusing and intimidating and chock full of bureaucracy, because to a large degree it is. But if a 17-year-old with no political experience can navigate through that process, you can too. You are not too small or too inexperienced to make an enormous change. So with that in mind, I would love for you all to take a moment, and I'm really going to make you pause and to think about something that bugs you. Something that you find yourself complaining about, something that doesn't seem right. Something you just wish you could get your hands on and make it work better, to make it more fair. And if you had all the power in the world to tell someone else a fix for that problem, what would you say? Okay? Now write that down and get to work. Thank you.